At the beginning of the 19th century, life in rural England followed unwritten rules. Social status, manners, and appearances often weighed more than true feelings. Families watched each other closely. Neighbors whispered behind hands, and even a single glance could shape reputations for years. It was a world of elegance and expectation, where fortunes and marriages determined the fate of young women and the stability of households. It is in this setting that we meet the Bennet family. Mr. Bennet, witty and reserved, observes the domestic whirlwind with quiet irony. Mrs. Bennet, obsessed with securing good marriages for her 5 daughters, swings between hope and despair. Among the sisters, Jane shines with kindness and grace, while Elizabeth stands out for her intelligence and sharp eye, always noticing the social pretensions around her. Pride, prejudice, and first impressions drive this story. Misunderstandings and social pressures test hearts and reveal character. From the arrival of wealthy neighbors to the tensions of balls and social gatherings, the Bennets' lives unfold with refined humor, subtle critique, and timeless lessons about love and authenticity. And have you ever wondered how small choices can change an entire life? If you enjoy stories that blend romance, society, and wit, like this video, share it with friends who love classic literature, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. The story begins with a line that has become unforgettable. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. With this subtle irony, Jane Austen draws us into the heart of the Bennet family, where Mrs. Bennet is obsessed with marrying off her 5 daughters. The news arrives. The young and wealthy Mr. Bingley has rented Netherfield Park. For Mrs. Bennet, the house quickly becomes a stage for hopes and marriage plans. Mr. Bennet, with his usual irony, watches his wife's excitement, while Elizabeth, the second daughter, keeps her critical and discerning eye on the social rush around her. The first ball arrives, a scene of glances, smiles, and small tensions. Jane, sweet and graceful, captures Bingley's attention, who is warm and friendly, while Darcy, distant and proud, makes the opposite impression. Elizabeth notices his coldness and, offended by his remarks, immediately feels a sense of prejudice. From the start, Austen plants the contrast that will guide the story: Bingley's lightness and kindness versus Darcy's pride, and Elizabeth's intelligence and sharp wit, refusing to passively accept societal judgments and expectations. Every gesture and glance carries meaning, and the Bennet story begins to unfold amid romance, pride, and misunderstandings. After the first ball, neighborhood chatter quickly intensifies. Everyone comments on Bingley's charm and the kindness he shows, especially toward Jane Bennet. His interest in her is clear, fueling Mrs. Bennet's exaggerated hopes as she begins imagining the future marriage. Jane, in turn, shows a quiet but genuine affection, revealing her sweetness and grace in every gesture. Elizabeth watches everything with a critical eye. She notices both her mother's excitement and the way Darcy is judged by the community. He remains distant, makes no effort to please, and quickly earns a reputation for arrogance. Elizabeth's dislike grows when she overhears Darcy remark that she is not pretty enough to tempt him. This moment plants the first barrier of pride and prejudice, showing how appearances shape feelings. Among the Bennet sisters and their friends, sharp conversations reveal how social conventions dictate behavior and expectations. Elizabeth, unlike the others, responds with intelligence and wit, standing out for refusing to blindly follow society's rules. In this dance of glances and remarks, Austen already sows the seeds of romance and conflict. While Jane and Bingley seem to move toward an ideal courtship, Elizabeth and Darcy place themselves on opposite poles, unaware of how their lives will soon intertwine. Fate begins to bring Jane and Bingley even closer. After receiving an invitation to visit Netherfield, Jane is caught in a heavy rain that leaves her ill, forcing her to stay at the wealthy friend's house. Mrs. Bennet, ever calculating, sees a golden opportunity, an unexpected event that could strengthen the bond between her daughter and Bingley. Worried, Elizabeth decides to visit Jane on foot, braving mud and long roads. Upon arriving at the mansion, she causes a stir. Her muddy shoes and weathered clothing are seen as signs of a lack of refinement by Caroline Bingley, who wastes no opportunity to mock her simple demeanor. Darcy, however, observes Elizabeth differently. Though he tries to hide it, he begins to recognize in her a lively intelligence and a strength of character that intrigues him. The days at Netherfield become a stage of contrasts, Jane and Bingley growing closer through tender conversations, Caroline attempting to belittle Elizabeth with sharp remarks, and Darcy silently struggling with an unexpected attraction to someone who challenges his standards of pride and status. Austen shows that behind social conventions and hasty judgments, there are encounters that defy expectations, moments capable of transforming hearts and destinies. With Jane still recovering, Elizabeth stays at Netherfield, and her interactions with Darcy gain unexpected nuances. He notices her steadiness, sharp gaze, and courage to remain authentic, even under Caroline Bingley's veiled criticism. Slowly, Darcy begins to feel drawn to Elizabeth, though he struggles against the feeling, bound by pride and social differences. Meanwhile, conversations in the mansion highlight the contrast between Jane and Elizabeth, the former sweet and serene, always seeing the best in people, the latter witty and critical, unwilling to accept injustice or false appearances. Caroline, troubled by the attention Darcy gives the visitor, constantly tries to undermine Elizabeth, but each attempt only strengthens her in his eyes. Bingley, on the other hand, openly shows his affection for Jane, treating her with care and genuine warmth, winning over even the most skeptical. This parallel between the light, natural romance of Bingley and Jane and the silent tension between Darcy and Elizabeth makes the days at Netherfield unforgettable. Austen creates a play of contrasts. While one love blossoms effortlessly, another emerges amidst pride and hasty judgments, foreshadowing the conflicts that will drive the story forward. Back at the Bennet household, the routine is interrupted by the arrival of a new character, Mr. Collins, the family's cousin and heir to Longbourn, a flattering, self-important young clergyman, always eager to please Lady Catherine de Bourgh, his patron. Collins quickly proves vain and inconvenient, taking an immediate fancy to Elizabeth and choosing her as the target of his marriage proposal, not out of love, but convenience. At the same time, Officer George Wickham appears, his charm and friendliness standing in stark contrast to Darcy's reserved demeanor. He quickly wins Elizabeth's trust with his politeness and pleasant appearance. During a conversation, he shares a story of injustice, claiming that Darcy deprived him of an inheritance that had been promised. Wickham's version only reinforces the poor impression Elizabeth already has of Darcy. While Collins represents the comic and awkward side of social conventions, Wickham fuels Elizabeth's prejudice. Austen shows how first impressions can shape judgments and become emotional traps. Between inconvenient heirs and charming officers, tensions rise. Elizabeth's choices begin to carry weight, signaling that every decision will have profound consequences for her future. Tensions escalate at the Bennet household when Mr. Collins, almost mechanically, proposes to Elizabeth. To him, it is a logical choice to marry one of the daughters whose family estate he will inherit. But Elizabeth, true to her independent spirit, refuses without hesitation. Her refusal sparks Mrs. Bennet's despair and a direct clash with Mr. Bennet, who supports Elizabeth, showing that happiness cannot be sacrificed for convenience. Shortly after surprising news spreads, Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's closest friend, agrees to marry Collins, a practical, calculated decision that ensures stability without love, shocking everyone. Meanwhile, the social circle continues buzzing. Bingley and Jane grow closer, while Elizabeth begins to clearly see differences in character: Jane's innocence, Charlotte's practicality, and above all, Darcy's constant arrogance. Elizabeth's prejudice against Darcy solidifies, reinforced by Wickham's revelations. Austen places her protagonist before choices that expose social pressures and the weight of judgment. Love and pride begin to follow divergent paths, foreshadowing the conflicts that will shape the entire story. After Charlotte's marriage to Collins, Elizabeth visits her friend and sees clearly how a marriage based solely on convenience can be devoid of affection and freedom. Life with Collins and Charlotte reveals not just the coldness of a loveless marriage, but also the social pressures many women face, reinforcing Austen's critique of the norms of the time. Meanwhile, Darcy remains an enigma to Elizabeth. Every gesture of his, even distant or reserved, is interpreted through the lens of her prejudice. Wickham's charm only strengthens her dislike of Darcy, showing how first impressions can blind us and distort judgment. At the same time, Jane suffers the pain of seeing Bingley withdraw. Influenced by advice and Darcy's opinion of the Bennet family's supposed inadequacy, Bingley distances himself from Jane, leaving a trail of frustration and anxiety. Elizabeth witnesses these social injustices and realizes how pride and outside interference can shape destinies. Austen paints a scene of contrasts: convenient marriages versus genuine feelings, pride versus humility, prejudice versus true perception. Behind appearances and conventions, dilemmas arise that test character and sensitivity, setting the stage for the revelations and transformations to come. Nothing surprised Elizabeth more than the letter Darcy gave her. As she opens the envelope, she feels a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Every line reveals unexpected truths. Wickham, whom she believed to be a wronged and charming young man, had attempted to deceive Darcy for personal and financial gain. Her initial naivety turns into shock and disbelief. Darcy also explains his reasons for interfering in Jane and Bingley's relationship. His actions, once seen as arrogant and manipulative, were based on concerns he deemed legitimate, given social differences and the imprudence of certain Bennet family members. Elizabeth experiences a whirlwind of emotions: shame for her hasty judgment, doubt about her own perception, and growing admiration for Darcy's honesty. The letter deepens the social context of 19th century England. Elizabeth realizes how society values status, wealth, and family connections, norms capable of blinding even the sharpest minds. The letter is not just a revelation about Darcy. It is an invitation to reflect: how much do we judge by social standards? Understanding another person requires patience, empathy, and courage to face our own prejudices. Reading the letter becomes an emotional turning point. Elizabeth acknowledges her flawed judgment, and Darcy, even from a distance, shows vulnerability and integrity. The chapter gains psychological and social depth, revealing that true understanding between people goes far beyond first impressions. Back at the Bennet household, Elizabeth feels that nothing will ever be the same. The impact of Darcy's letter still resonates, and she begins to observe every gesture of his in a new light. Austen deepens the social context, the role of women, class limitations, and the pressure to marry well, even at the cost of one's own happiness. Elizabeth reflects on how her pride and prejudice shaped her perceptions. She realizes she often mistook coldness for dignity and distance for disdain. Understanding someone requires time, attention, and empathy. Lessons that begin to transform her view of Darcy. Darcy also undergoes change. He recognizes that his pride prevented him from acting with openness and humanity, and that true feelings require courage to overcome social and emotional barriers. Austen shows that personal growth is a mutual process. Both Elizabeth and Darcy must adjust their perceptions and behaviors for their relationship to be possible. The chapter reinforces the contrast between genuine love and social convenience. Jane and Bingley embody lightness and sincerity. Elizabeth and Darcy learn that mutual understanding and respect can transform pride and prejudice into real affection. The reunion between Darcy and Elizabeth marks the climax of the story, charged with emotion and anticipation. There are no misunderstandings or hasty judgments. Both arrive mature and self-aware. Darcy, now conscious of his pride, approaches with humility and sincerity. Elizabeth notices his efforts and recognizes her own growth, letting understanding and respect guide her feelings. Meanwhile, Jane and Bingley solidify their romance. His return dissolves the distance caused by outside interference, showing that true love is resilient yet sensitive to social influences. The contrast between the two couples highlights different ways of facing challenges: Jane and Bingley with natural ease, Elizabeth and Darcy with personal growth, and the overcoming of pride and prejudice. Austen uses this chapter to reflect on the society of the time. Marriage is an institution full of expectations, but it can become a positive experience when there is respect, empathy, and understanding. Every gesture, dialogue, and glance now conveys depth, showing that personal maturity is essential for authentic relationships. The emotional arc concludes. Pride, prejudice, and first impressions are finally overcome. Elizabeth and Darcy meet not just as lovers, but as transformed individuals, able to see beyond appearances and value character and essence. Austen makes it clear, true love arises from growth, reflection, and the courage to open oneself to another, making this ending timeless and inspiring. Pride and Prejudice is far more than a classic romance. It opens a window into human behavior, hasty judgments, and the personal growth that comes when we dare to confront ourselves. Throughout the story, Elizabeth and Darcy show us that true love is built not only on attraction or social convenience, but on patience, respect, and the courage to overcome personal limitations. Jane and Bingley embody the lightness of genuine affection, demonstrating that even the gentlest romances require care and attention amidst outside influences. At the same time, Elizabeth and Darcy's growth teaches us that mutual understanding and the courage to see beyond appearances can transform pride and prejudice into true affection. The 19th century English society, with its rules and expectations, remains a reminder that social norms may shape choices, but do not have to define the heart. The lesson is timeless. True connection between people requires reflection, empathy, and the bravery to open oneself to another. Watching Elizabeth and Darcy's final meeting, we realize that emotional growth is the key to authentic, meaningful relationships. Now, we want to hear from you. Which character left the biggest impression on you in this story? Who do you think went through the most transformation? Comment below and let's talk about these timeless lessons. If this video touched something in you, don't let it pass by. Like and share it with someone who, like you, values deep reflections. To continue this journey with us, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Every video here is an invitation to see life and yourself in a new way. And if you want to dive deeper into other works, choose one of the 2 videos appearing on the screen and meet me there. See you in the next video. Bye.